Welcome to the Reality Revolution. Today, we're going to read the amazingly beautiful words of Quo. Quo is an alliance of highly evolved civilizations that channel through LL Research, an organization in Kentucky. And they have collaborated for 50 years for some amazing channelings that discuss the universe and a variety of spiritual questions. What is fun about reading Quo is that when I decide to read a lecture, sometimes I am guided in the most unusual and unique ways. There are 50 years of lectures, so we're talking about a vast amount of literature to read. And when I first encountered this, as somebody that loves to read, that's a bibliophile, I just loved this, something that was going to be so vast, it's going to take me a long time to digest it. I even got physical copies of many of the Quo channelings, but even then, we have barely scratched the surface of the many things they've talked about. But sometimes, because I regularly call upon Quo and the entities within Quo in my meditations as they ask to do, and sometimes when I sit down and choose a channeling to read, I am guided. I believe that today I was guided to this one. This is on sacred contracts, those soul contracts that we have prior to incarnation and what they mean in our spiritual journey. This was delivered on October 11th, 2004. Question. A comes to us with a question about guidance regarding her sacred contracts prior to this incarnation, what she might be guided to do with this incarnation, and also her divine purpose. Carla channeling. We are those known to you as the principle of Quo, and we greet you in the love and the light of the one infinite creator. It is a great privilege to be with this group this day, and we thank each of you for taking the time and the incredible effort and energy that it does take to satisfy the time for spiritual work. It creates a tremendous vortex of energy, and we are most privileged to be called to your group to share thoughts with you in this vortex of purpose and circumstance. Thank you for this privilege. We thank you for the beauty of your vibrations as you sit in meditation, and thank you for this circle of seeking. We would ask each of you to protect us in our concern for not violating the principle of free will, listening very carefully to those things that we say, and discriminating between those ideas which may resonate to you and those which do not. If they do resonate and feel familiar and useful to you, by all means run with them. Use them and work with them as you see fit. If there is no answering echo in your heart from thoughts that we offer, please, it would be the greatest favor to us if you would simply leave them behind. For we would not want to create a stumbling block before you. Truth is not an objective thing when it comes to metaphysical truth. Truth is entirely subjective, and your own powers of discrimination are more than adequate to knowing that which is for you and that which is not for you at this time. Thank you very much. Your query concerns your sacred contract and your divine purpose, and we would take those two separately. For the concept of a sacred contract is one which we find to be full of the pitfalls of the culture in which you live. You certainly have created contracts, and we say that in the plural rather than the singular before this incarnation. These contracts have to do with relationships in your considerations before this incarnation. You and the guidance system which is yours sat down together and thoughtfully, carefully considered where you as a soul felt that you were with the issues of polarity and of balance, for it is desirable to those heavily polarized towards service to other and quite common and usual that there will be an issue of balance involved in choosing the relationships with which you set yourself up before incarnation. This is the balance between wisdom and love. For those who have come back into this incarnation from higher densities, it is easy to see the great benefit of unconditional love, and it is easy to see the great benefits of true wisdom. It is sometimes difficult for an entity whose previous incarnational experiences have biased her in one or the other of those two qualities to be able to see how to correct a self-perceived imbalance between these two qualities. Therefore, the relationships that are set up have the function of offering repeated or theme-like cycles of catalyst, in which again and again you will receive catalyst that brings up not only the service to others question of how to be of service, whether to be of service and so forth, but also the question of using your open heart and your wisdom to address this catalyst, this situation, and this relationship. It is hoped that through these repeated cyclical occurrences of catalyst in your life, you will slowly win through to a felt sense of where that balance point for you lies. In this instrument, for instance, it was heavily overbalanced into love when it first began its incarnation and found it very easy to contemplate, for instance, the giving of the life for others or martyrdom short of giving the life, feeling that anything that could be done for others was worthy any and all efforts from this instrument. The instrument has worked for decades to attempt to blend in the hard-won lessons of wisdom which she has recovered in this incarnation, thanks to the learned teaching of entities such as the one known as Dawn and the one known as Jim, and many others with which she has had converse and communion. For each entity, this balance is unique, and the cues and clues and whispers for guidance are going to be unique, and so we would not do this for you in any sense, but simply say that this is a continuing issue that is very fruitful for you to consider as you find yourself in various situations with various of those with whom you have come in contact. The ones for whom you are attempting to do the body of work and the other sacred ministry of touch work are obviously those who have been given to you so that you may learn as well as offer your service. It is not sometimes so clear that the entity who cuts you off in traffic, the shopkeeper in the store who is attempting to assist you with your purchase, the postmistress at the post office, and the neighbor at the grocery store are contacts that are also equally helpful and equally on task and on target for your process. Yet this is so. So we would recommend in terms of your sacred contracts that you realize that beneath the surface of errands and paperwork and the duties of the day, that those people that are in your life are each, very potentially, the owners with you of a sacred contract. Now when it comes to the work at hand for the life, the incarnational lessons, the incarnation service, there is not precisely a contract. It is as though you have envisioned setting up a business. This obviously is only a very rough analogy, but this instrument has gone through the exercise of setting up a business and is aware of the things that you need to do, and so that is what we are using from her mind, that technique that one has of setting out the basic purposes of that business and the assets that you have in starting the business and the challenges that you have, and just looking 1 month down the road, 1 year down the road, 5 years down the road, and developing a game plan. Earlier in life, the young years of childhood, it is difficult to find enough surety of focus to begin to realize in any settled or mature sense to what such large chunks of time and talent and treasure will be given. However, as the years of incarnation pile up and experiences mount, there begins to be a more and more clear focus, and we are aware that you will like to improve the clarity of this focus as you gaze about you at this business that you have started and wonder, what is my next step? What is the true whole or the true character of this business of mine, this sacred business that I wish to be about? It is important to realize, however, that in terms of contract, your contract is simply to serve. You truly hoped before incarnation to serve and to learn. The learning is almost inevitable. For the accompaniment of service and the offshoots into learning that you receive from attempting to serve are numerous and countless. So we would ask you to lift up from attempting to nail down some sort of step-by-step contract and begin to realize that this is in your hands, not just now, but each day of the rest of your incarnation. Your service is malleable. It is not something like a puzzle of which you simply must fill in the blanks. The instrument is very fond of puzzles, and she is used to taking the definitions and putting each letter into the square. You do not have the kind of puzzle in order to determine with clarity what your purpose is. Rather, it is as if you have been given a take-home test, and it is an essay test, and you will be grading this test as well as taking it. And you may retake this test each day if you wish, or each year. You may reevaluate. You may reconsider. And we urge you to go back whenever there is a glitch, seemingly, in the process, and do just that. Review your parameters and review what you think you know about yourself, about your sense of where you are, your sense of what you want for your immediate future and so forth, so that you can have the feeling at all times that you are fresh, you are new, you are not plodding through a preconceived pattern at all. This is your growth. You're blooming, and you have the watering can, the fertilizer, and the will to grow. Indeed, you play all the parts in this little garden of growth that is your sacred purpose. The divine plan for each entity who takes breath upon planet Earth is greatly unified. The divine plan for each entity who takes breath upon planet Earth is greatly unified. The divine plan for each entity is for that entity to discover herself and to manifest that being that lies within, so that at the end of your incarnation you are an energy field radiating in self-knowledge and truth. Now let us look at that model a bit, for it sounds simple and yet it is sufficiently counter to the ways of thinking of your culture that our thoughts really bear some discussion in order to be at all really understood. When an entity in your culture starts to talk about herself, it is not in terms of being, but in terms of doing. This is what I do for a living. This is what I do for pleasure. And this is what I do to serve. Yet your divine purpose is to be. You came into incarnation as an energy field. You pulled through from your total self certain characteristics as what this instrument would call a personality shell. Your intelligence, your personality, the way you express yourself, the things that you are good at, the things that you do not seem to be good at, and so forth. These are as the very surface of a very deep body of water. The waves upon the surface only are these markers for what lies beneath the waves of personality. You have an infinite depth to your true self, and you have connections between your waking consciousness that is so involved in the personality shell and your total self. Those threads of connection are slender and fragile, but very, very strong in the sense that they cannot be broken. They can be disturbed, and many times we find that the very silver cord itself has been roughly used, shall we say, so that it is difficult at first for entities to do the dream work, the visualization work, and the meditative work that helps strengthen those inner connections between the surface self and the true self. However, we do not find in this particular case that is what has happened. Indeed, the connections between the conscious self and the subconscious self seem to be very vital and used very well, and so we would simply encourage the one known as A to continue in those processes in which she is already involved, working with the dreams, the intuitions, and the silence itself. The essence of self is a living thing. The name that entities have within incarnation is often felt to be inadequate, and so other names are sought that seem to have a vibration that is more in accord with your inner sense of who you are, from the standpoint of higher densities, or from the inner planes of your own density, where your own metaphysical work takes place. However, no name is necessary. Your energy field itself is your name. Your vibration is your identity. We have no doubt as to who each is within this group, not because we know your name, but because we see you as you are, vibrating away, coruscating with light, color, and texture. And each entity has her own inner structure, her own relationships and balances between the chakras and so forth. So how can one penetrate illusion after illusion about the self and come more and more into a sense of who she is? That remains to us as well as to you a mystery in terms of being able to spell out how this works. It is an entirely intuitive process, and the more that you can pay attention to the energies of your emotions, the more resources that you will have. Now, in this regard, let us look at two different levels of emotion for working with. The instant, easy surface emotions is one thing. Working with the deeper emotions is another. First of all, let us gaze at the easy and surface emotions. Immediately coming into this instrument's mind when we speak of surface emotions are those irritations that she experiences. For instance, in her car, when she is in traffic, it is very easy to feel upset when one is cut off in traffic. That is a good emotion to look at, and it teaches But what it teaches is significantly different from what the deeper emotions may teach. For a surface reaction, that which comes instantly and dives away quickly is as a newspaper. It speaks of what is occurring at this particular moment. It does not speak of the deeper processes that are taking place within incarnation, within your being. It is simply the momentary disturbance of the surface of water, yet each disturbance is worth looking at. For in each disturbance there is a separation of self from other self, and in each occurrence this separation can fruitfully be examined to determine that which pulled you apart from your fellow being, and then to find ways to heal that separation, to find unity once again with that stranger or friend which has pulled you off balance. Even when a momentary occurrence delights one, yet still, again, it is important to examine what to see if the light has an undercurrent of separation in it, and if so, what that was. What you are trying to do in examining these very surface events is to improve your point of view. The exercise of going deeper, looking for the love, looking for the unity beneath the separation or disharmony is cumulative in its effect upon widening and deepening one's instinctual default point of view. And the point of view is crucial. For at that point of view from which you look at the world, you will see certain patterns in a certain way. As your point of view widens, broadens, and strengthens in its uncompromisingly metaphysical orientation, you will begin to see a different world. And as that world becomes stronger in its metaphysical point of view, so your lessons will come to you on rounder wheels and with more grease in them, smoother, easier, more understandable. So the little irritations of the day are not simply dross to be swept away like dirt in the spume of the froth of a wave. This is good material to scoop up with the hand. Take a good look at it before you toss it out. Working with the deeper emotions is a slower and more subtle process and is entirely intuitive. It demands that you begin to realize when your deeper emotional bodies have been penetrated. You need to begin to see that time where you have felt an essential true emotion, whether it is joy or grief or irritation. These deeper emotions are as notes, and it is important for you to be able to play your instrument, to know it well, and to be able to tune it, as this instrument was earlier talking about tuning her physical, her mental, her emotional, and her spiritual bodies for the receiving of this contact which is presently ongoing. You are an instrument. You are a crystal instrument. Your energies express themselves in color rather than sound, in light rather than music, yet they are most substantially there and are your deeper expression of being. They are those things which will not disappear when your physical vehicle has gone again into the dust from which it was formed. As a citizen of eternity, then, you are not just working upon what is evident and obvious, your physical being, your momentary thought, and so forth. You are working on the permanent part of yourself insofar as you are able. When you're attempting to do, as we said earlier, it is to become more truly yourself, to sing your crystal song ever more beautifully, ever more truly, on pitch, ever more deeply, honestly, the essence that is you. This is the whole of your divine purpose. You came to stand, as this instrument would say, as the lamp upon the hill, as the lighthouse before all, not to push them around, not to reach out to them with some great message, but simply to be there, shining your light in your way. For in that light's influence, you shall be of the service for which you came into this world. That lighthouse shall bring you the sailors who need your particular energy. That lighthouse shall warn off the rocks those who need to be warned off the rocks in your vicinity. You have no need to reach out. You have no need to look forward or even to look back. Your need in terms of your divine purpose is to be who you are, proudly, with self-confidence, with quietness, and with great persistence. We are aware from your discussion before this reading that there are many things upon the plate of the one known as A right now, many directions that she can go. The energy work, the flower of life work, the sacred geometry, and various other aspects of her studies and so forth. Do not drown in the details. That is what we would say in this regard. Take them lightly to a certain extent. Laugh with yourself. Draw cartoons joking with yourself concerning your great purpose, for you do have a great purpose. It is a wonderful purpose. Yet it is not a purpose in that sense where you tie action to circumstance and say, this is what I must do. You need more to come to a continuing series of what this instrument would call epiphanies, or realizations about who you are and why you are here, the nature of your essence, the nature of your big business at which you are looking. We would speak briefly of the query concerning the sword bearing, and we would guide the one known as A simply to examine the archetype of the Archangel Michael. This entity is part of what this instrument would call a mythological system, which this entity uses herself in her own spiritual work. She uses all 4 of the archangels as she tunes herself for contact. The one known as Michael or Michael is that energy which is of the east. It is of fire, and it, as a figure, has a sword. Sometimes when this instrument visualizes the 4 archetypical archangels and the 4 elements, she finds the figure of Michael standing. His sword may be drawn but pointed down at the earth, or his sword may be drawn and held upwards, or his sword may be in his scabbard. He may be kneeling or he may be standing. There is not simply one wooden or archetypical figure of the element of fire. Rather, it is a living, breathing entity that has been moved into by countless entities in the process of their spiritual work through millennia. Therefore, this thought form has a tremendous amount of power, which it is very, very oriented to share with you. So the question for you as a sword bearer is, what is the truth that the sword is protecting? And in any particular case, in any particular situation, does the sword need to be drawn? Does the sword need to be baited? And if the sword is drawn, does it need to be in a non-challenging or in a challenging mode? Thusly, it may be fruitful for you, before moving into situations in which you sense that truth will be an issue, to sense into how that figure is standing. Go into the silence and ask it to be visual to you. Ask it to show you how its posture and the position of the sword can give you clues as to your own part, your own role in this particular encounter. Those who protect the truth are light beings and light bearers, and each of those within this circle is certainly a companion with who the one known as A, in this regard, as all are light bearers, all being to some extent way showers. Remember though, that you are not showing a road or a direction. Everything you have to show is implicit in the light of your being. So allow these situations to come to you, and then allow the deepest truth within you to address itself to the situation. You spoke earlier concerning when someone comes to you for body work, not knowing what that work will be until the time is there and you ask within. So is that energy of the sword? Do not ask ahead, but only on the occasion, what is my role? How shall I shine? And trust your being above all. We do recommend to all who are attempting to deepen their spiritual aspects that you partake of this silence in your own way. There is a common prejudice for silent meditation and against other forms of silence, but we would encourage the one known as A to explore all forms of silence. The silence of walking in nature, for instance, the silence of visualization or contemplation, the silence involved in reading from spiritual material and then sitting and allowing the ideas just to roll around and form their own patterns. There are hidden connections within all of the various studies, and those which you do not think of as studies, but which do indeed blend into the studies because they are called by the studies as confirmations or additions. Observe the signs and the symbols, as the one known as A was saying that she does, and try to keep a daily energy available, if only for 5 minutes during the day, for working within the silence. Silence is the tabernacle. When one enters the silence, it is like entering a building of a certain type. It is a sacred building. Within the silence lies the Creator that is the heart of you. And indeed that silence finds its home within your heart. Take the time to enter your own heart and sit and listen, for it is spoken truth that the still small voice of silence offers the truth of your being. We thank the one known as A for this opening question, and would at this time ask if there are any questions that she might have to follow up this main question, we are those of Quo. Question, that's a lot to think of. Somehow, all the questions I have don't seem to be very important. Quo, what is this quantum learning or quantum something I've been told I'm going to be experiencing or going through. Quantuming, what does that mean? We are those of Quo and are aware of your query, my sister. The concept of a quantum is a concept of, say, a semester in school, a unit of something that once that is done, it is done, and one goes on to what one must go on to. Another quantum in order to continue. In quantum physics, the quantum is as the universe, and it can be filled with just so many items, and then that is the complete amount that can fit into that quantum. In your terms, we would probably move more through the meaning of a semester that has been completed. The amount of learning which you have gone through up to this point has given you more and more and more detail, and as you move into your next field of study, there will be much more detail. We would suggest that what happens is that as detail after detail after detail is added, there comes a crucial time when, just as in a supersaturated solution, more and more is added to the water. Suddenly, the solution goes away and a crystal appears, and this is what you are in the process of achieving in terms of your study. The result of this study will not be that you will lose the detail precisely, but that it will have a certain pattern. It will have a certain crystalline arrangement where it all makes sense to a certain degree. It is another way of saying that you are not filling in the blanks in a puzzle. You are putting in your information to make a crystal, and that crystal will be simplified, central structure of awareness. Notice we did not say knowledge, we said awareness, where when you hear from someone who has come to you for help in this and this and this and this detail, you will see it not in terms of a tally of 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. Oh, that's 4 details. You will see that in terms of, I believe I'm beginning to see the shape of this entity's bias, this entity's distortion. And from that simplified point of view, you have a much clearer idea, a sense of how to help that person, of how to serve that person, of what is possible, what is not possible, what you're able to say without infringing on her learning process, what you're not able to say without infringement upon her learning process. It is as if you are cramming in more and more detail, not to achieve complexity, but to get to the point where the crystal awareness forms for you. You cannot force this to occur. You cannot hurry the process. Question, am I almost there? We are those of Quo, and we may confirm that most of the detail that you need for this crystal to form is indeed there. But it is not known to us, nor can it be known to you ahead of time when the crystal shall form, or what details shall need to come in order for you to go. Oh, I see it now. Yet this time will come. We can only encourage you not to hurry it, not to look for it, but to do the work day by day and detail by detail of receiving the information, seeding the information, and using the information. May we answer you further, my sister. I have been doing some work with a teacher by the name of S, who involves herself with work regarding the removal of crystals and in aligning with the crystalline grid. Is this work beneficial? Is this beneficial to me? We are those of Quo, and we find that to answer this query in any way would infringe upon your learning process, and therefore we respectfully would request that we just pass this question and simply encourage you to follow your heart, to sense into this relationship and this learning, and to see how it feels to go further into those interests that she has. May we answer you further in any other way, my sister. Well, speaking of infringement, in the work that I'm involved at, I am in the process of learning more about removing heavy dust or objects in one's auric fields. Of course, my intention is always to ask for permission to remove it, but I have had concerns to know if this is in any way an infringement upon others' growth process, the removal of objects in the auric layers. We are those of Quo and are aware of your query, my sister. Let us look at this question carefully, for there is a good lesson to be learned here. When you are attempting to be of service, it is important to investigate the parameters of which you do not have any idea beforehand. These parameters have to do not with your person or structure, but with the person or structure of the entity who has come to you for help. You need to find a way to address the question with the entity whom you are attempting to help. This instrument has done such work before with the pendulum, asking for a yes or no answer and putting the questions very carefully. Does the guidance system of the one whom I am trying to help feel that this entity is ready for the removal of this distortion from the energy body? Form a way whether it is pendulums or other technique which may be known to you and feel more convenient or comfortable, of getting in contact with the inner guidance system of the entity whom you are attempting to help, and being absolutely sure that the guidance system is giving permission for this entity to be healed. This will clear the way for the healing to be done, and it will enlist the help of that entity's higher self, so that you are not alone in attempting to aid, but you are simply part of the divine creative principle at work in response to one who has asked and has been given the potential for an answer. It is well written, "Knock, and it shall be opened to you. Ask, and you shall receive." You may trust that an entity who comes to you is consciously asking for help, and that it is well to explore the subconscious processes involved in this person, and to be sure that you are not indeed using your power and your ability to remove from a person that speck of dirt which that person needs removed at that particular time. Better, indeed, to tell such a person, "I can do this much, but I cannot go further," than to place that person in an unprotected and unguarded situation in which she somehow does not feel safe and secure. Is there a final query at this time? Out of curiosity, could you tell me anything about my home planet or the solar system that I am from? And will this be my last incarnation here? We are those of Quo, and my sister, we would prefer not to explore the question of your antecedents, for they are closely guarded by your higher self, and we would not be those who placed you in a position of knowledge before your higher self offered its own way of giving permission. Know that these details will come to you in dreams or in casual converse with those who are psychic, who happen to communicate with you at the time in which you are ready for them. Up until that time, realize that for each person who has taken incarnation upon planet Earth is the native planet. You are truly one who lives here, one who breathes the air and is part of the planet itself. This is your native land at this time, and shall be until such time as you do not any longer draw breath. As to it being your final incarnation, my sister, you have the potential for this to be your final incarnation. As this instrument would say with a big smile, don't screw up with that. And the encouragement at all times to use humor, for it is truly a divine gift. We would leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. Please know that at any time that you would appreciate our vibration underlining your own and our love embracing you, you've only to mention our name mentally, and we will be with you. You never need to be alone. We are those of Quo. Adonai. Adonai. So this concludes this fascinating lecture. I think many of us suspect that we have some sort of sacred contract that we set before us before we came into this incarnation. And oftentimes, as they explain, this contract deals with people that we have regularly in our life. It could be our father, mother, friend, boss. These people have been placed into our life by our choice to create conflict or catalyst that we need to experience in order to transcend or evolve spiritually. As for the divine purpose, we all have a divine purpose. And of course, Quo's never going to say, this is your divine purpose. You have to discover it on your own. Nobody can tell you what your divine purpose is. Somebody might be able to guess, but I believe that we have multiple purposes and that they're changing based on the time of our life, and that we can explore in silence what that purpose is. And in meditation, by contemplating and meditating upon our purpose, we can get great information that can really help us. There is an important discussion in here on being of service to others, and you may not be able to ask them, can I help to serve you? You can, in meditation, using a pendulum or some other technique, ask the question, does the guidance system of this person want me to serve them? And you can get an answer. Sometimes by integrating the higher self of the other person, you can clarify whether or not your service is required. The one thing I can tell you that I most resonated with, and I feel like it's true of everyone that is listening or watching this episode, and that your purpose was to be a lighthouse, to shine your light, no matter what, to warn those from the rocks ahead and to guide those to the island, to enable them and help them with your energies that you are broadcasting outward. And that's your ultimate purpose. It doesn't necessarily require you to do something. It is who you are. You are broadcasting this light. You are the light. And your very being, your very essence, is already accomplishing its purpose because of the love within you. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.